Do I have the clicker?
Oh, but there's no clicker.
Ah.
The video's on now.
Okay. So, I'll just stand behind here this time then. It's difficult because I like to move about and I'll probably end up strangling you. Never a good start, is it?
I got that on video, Mark.
Yeah, I know. It's all right. You can edit it out. Okay, good morning everybody. So my name's Mark Loveday and I work for Avanti Communications, and we are one of the businesses that are based here on this Goonhilly Earth Station. And what field we're into is we are satellite communications. So what Avanti do is mainly communications. We own a fleet of 3 satellites that are all in geostationary orbit, and we allow broadband and internet access through our satellites to people in the UK, Europe, Middle East and sub-Saharan Africa, into those areas where it's difficult for fibre or copper to get into. So it's the sort of rural areas and that sort of access to the data that people need. So why do we have satellite? What is the satellite applications? I'm sure all of you have a mobile phone. Put your hand up if you don't have a mobile phone. That's one. See, when I was your age, the idea of a concept of a mobile phone didn't exist. But we all absorb huge amounts of data, whether we're on internet access at home, we're now school life, researching information. The internet is an amazing access. But at the moment, you need, if you're in a rural area, say large farming areas as this, it's difficult that you don't have that mobile access. That satellite access is the thing that can get into those areas where your fibre and your copper doesn't reach. So there's an application on there, farming, and so like the areas that we work in, they have like very large farming area, large amounts of data. You look at farming areas in African nations, they are, farms beyond the line of sight. So if you want to be able to know information about how your crops are doing, how the yield is doing, the moisture is in those areas, well, you can put your sensors out there. You've got no mobile access there, but satellite can get to those places where the mobile phones and stuff is there. So that's a use of application data. So that's an area to think about, where you could have a killer app. Emergency services. Why is satellite used to emergency services? Well, the mobile phone network can get easily blocked. You have an accident, people tend to get on their mobile phone now, send a message that I'm safe. So that service can get quite congested. The emergency services don't want to be relying on that service, or if that mobile service itself has been knocked out, well, satellite communications, that's the thing that can jump in, give that reliable service that gives them the access, so they can and then they can get the people, the first attenders. They can get information. They can get information back to the hospital about the situation of those people, and maybe at the accident. They can also, might not necessarily be that they have the expertise there, because they need some specialist information from these doctors. Well, they can get that data into the hospital, get into those doctors through Google Glass, your mobile phones, anything like that. You can start to get that information to the situation faster, and therefore save people's lives. Logistics and transport. You are going to be the first generation, I believe, where there will be no place in this world where you cannot get internet access, and this is being supported by satellite comms. So when you're the next generation of aircraft that you'll get on to now, you'll be able to connect your phone to the Wi-Fi on those airplanes, connect to your Netflix, Amazon Prime, your Facebook, there is in there. And obviously logistics of transportation, having that near instantaneous information of where parcels and any asset is that people need to know, track movement, being able to sit down and maybe update them to say that actually this is a congested area, or there's a large amount of pollution in this area, so therefore there's been a flag up to say that only low polluting vehicles are allowed there, so then you can route that traffic to avoid those areas, so it's, you know, so the environment and everything's better for us. You know, sea state changes, information about their routes. Piracy is obviously a bit of an issue around the coast of Africa. I think in the news at the moment there's obviously issues around in the Straits of Moors, around the Gulf. Being able to get instant information that's valuable now to these kinds of companies that rely on this, all underpinned by satellite communications. And finally, medicine. I'll go back, and that sort of links into that idea of where I was talking about the emergency. Being able to link hospitals together so that the general expertise, or the specialists, so the general expertise within emergency hospitals, your cottage hospitals, like you have in Helston, being able to link in to where the serious experts are in a near real time manner, so you can bring that information, bring that expertise in a virtual team into the hospital. Then, you know, information can be quickly moved on. People can be, you know, so it's all about this. The information that's now being available to the people that need it, so that reactions can be made quicker, faster, saving people's lives. And the last one I brought up, education. I'm sure if I ask you, you all have access to the internet at school. Probably got tablets that you've done some learn about coding, or if you want to find out a little bit more about anything. Am I right? Yeah. Well, actually, that is education is the big changer for areas with incredible amounts of poverty. So this is why we in Avanti are in with the different governments in Africa, supporting them to be able to get the internet access into primary schools, to give them the access that you take for granted, and that is a massive changer of lifting people out of poverty to be able to create businesses for themselves, to use that knowledge for the advancement of their countries and themselves. And this leads me on to this example, that one of the key bits that we do with Avanti is this iMalango project. So at the moment, this is something that's going on at the moment, and we are in helping 150,000 school children in Kenya to give them access to the internet, help them in schools. So I'm going to ask you a question here. How many of you travel more than an hour to get to school? So one of you. So you're pretty fairly local to where your school is. At the moment, the average child at primary level has to travel 10 kilometres walking to get to school. So there's a big push at the moment through like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to get every child in Africa to have one day at school. And the way that this can be supported to give them the best education, to allow them to tap into this, is to get into this access into the internet through broadband, through things. So this is the sort of projects that Avanti are involved in, all via our satellites that we sit and operate here. A bit closer to home, I'm sure that you've all seen the Superfast Broadbands, and you probably have Superfast Broadband available at your school, but there's still quite a number of areas, even in Cornwall, where they don't have this access to the Superfast Broadband. So we work with those businesses, and we can give them through our satellite, through a VSAT terminal, which is quite similar to, any of you got Sky? So you got a Sky dish, so similar sort of size dish. You strap on you connect on the side of your house, point up at one of our satellites, and there you can, through that, you can get your super fast broadband access. So that's locally here in Cornwall, enabling businesses to get that internet access that isn't available to them because they're not in the super fast broadband network. So how it works. So here's Cornwall. Alright. Here's our rural business. You know, on a copper line, probably getting 10 megabits. 10 megabits would be good. 10 kilobits or something like that. So they're, you know, and they obviously they can't grow their business, or they can't access into the businesses that maybe an urban business can do. So here we are down in Goonhilly, which is where we have our gateway, and our gateway is basically is the large disc that points at our satellites, and it's the gateway into our internet, to gateway in for the satellite. And we have one of our satellites, which is called HILAS 2, up in geostationary orbit. Alright, just there. So this puts down from there is to put a footprint, is what we call. So there has a broadcast and receiving beam, much like on your mobile phones. I don't know if you know, your mobile phone is connecting to a mast, and it's receiving and transmitting from that mast, and that's how the communication is here. But we're up in space, putting a radio frequency beam down over the footprint of Cornwall, which then enables through our VSAT terminal for that rural business, connects up to our satellite, gateway down to Goonhilly here onto the internet, because I don't know if you know, there's a very super fast connection here at Goonhilly. So there we go, that rural business is now got 40 megabits per second internet access, which is the same as you'd get if you live in Helston or Falmouth or Truro in that area, but that's now available to the remote locations of Cornwall. So moving on to what we actually do here in Goonhilly. So Avanti have they have 3 satellites and one which is called a hosted payload. So we have HILAS 1, HILAS 2 and HILAS 4. They are satellites we actually own, and they are satellites we operate here, and that accumulates to be about a cost of about $1.2 billion worth of asset that we are responsible here to own. So it's not just a big part of Avanti as a company, that is Avanti as a company. So there's a lot of responsibility that the team here have to make sure that those satellites stay within their designated location. I'm not sure whether most people don't know this, is that it's not merely a case of launching a satellite, dropping it into an orbit and then forgetting about it. The movement of the Earth, the gravity around the Earth isn't linear, so these perturbations cause the satellite to move around. We're not, you can't just have a situation where these satellites are all moving around. Eventually what's going to happen is they're going to bang into each other. That's not very good, especially when they cost so much money. So we are constantly monitoring the position of these satellites. If they move outside what we call a box, which is a set degrees that we're allowed to be in this geostationary orbit, then we have to move them back. So we fire the thrusters to move them back, and then we call those sort of station keeping maneuvers. So we have 3 satellites, as I say, that we are fundamentally operating from here. So we have flight operate. So we have a satellite operations center. We divide those up into separate teams that take responsibility for the different aspects of this. We also have another third satellite which we called HILAS 2B, which is a hosted payload. Hosted payload is where we have those RF transponders that put the footprint down in an area that we are particularly interested in, but we don't necessarily operate the satellite. That's sold out to a third party, so they do all the management, and we just do all the control of the beam. So carrying on our activities here in Goonhilly, which is kind of sort of leads into this bit that Kat was talking about, where you're thinking about opportunities within the space So we have at our satellite operations centre, as I said, have a team of satellite controllers. They're the most important people in my view, because they are the team that has the eyes and ears on the mission control system 24/7, looking after this 1.2 billion pounds of asset. I'll give you an example. So what that system is doing, it's processing the telemetry, the data that we receive from the spacecraft, turning it into information that a human being can then interpret. Because one of our satellites will produce 40,000 parameters every minute. There's no one human being in the world who can absorb and read 40,000 parameters that might be updating every minute to turn that data into information where you can sit down and say, oh yes, there's a particular issue with this spacecraft, or we need to do this maneuver because it's now drifted out of the box. So that's that's a valuable piece of software we have, which is the mission control system. Another part of the team we have is our satellite operations engineers, and they are the people who interpret that data that comes down. They do their weekly, monthly, quarterly reports to define the life of this spacecraft. Look at how our batteries are charging, discharging. Look at our use of our fuel. Look at the use of anything there. Because I'll give you an example is that if you're doing a satellite, so think like car manufacturing. Now, if you own a car, every year you get that car serviced. You can easily fill it up with fuel. So the engineering of that car is set at a level. For a spacecraft, we put these spacecraft up. They have to last out in a geostationary orbit, which is 35,800 kilometers away from the Earth. They have to last for 15 years. That means we must fuel them with enough fuel for 15 years, and we must have enough systems and redundancy on those systems that can mean that we can operate that satellite for 15 years. Because now it's quite difficult to send people that far to repair them and get them back. So that's what we, that's why we as satellite operations we exist, to try that. So I wanted to talk about some key challenges that we have that might give you some ideas within this challenge that you do. So we have we're very procedural driven. What I always like to say, we are very much measure twice, cut once. As I say, these spacecraft worth a lot of money, not easy to get to. So we are very focused down on our procedures. So we need to do a lot of testing on our procedures. So any sort of automation or improvement in that area is something that's really valuable to us, because it's quite engineering heavy in that. So there's a large number of size team that we need to recruit and keep working. The other system is like their improvement of our automated alert. So using maybe big data, artificial intelligence systems to even better produce that kind of movement from 40,000 parameters into data, maybe moving it into lateral language. So where I'm explaining to you now, and you may have Siri or Alexa or OK Google, where you could sit down and maybe get to a point of a mission control system where you could ask it questions, and it could, through natural language, report the state of a spacecraft or the plans of what you need to do, and that's all valuable improvement in our processes. That means that we spend less money operating these spacecraft. So I think that's it. Yeah, and our other key challenge, which is kind of related here today. One of the other key challenges, which is why we come in here, is it's you. You're the next generation that we hope to try and employ into this business. The average age of engineers in this country at the moment is 41. It's too high for us, as like any engineering business, to be able to have sustainability. We need to encourage the next generation, the likes of yourself, to come and do the relevant skills, at A levels, either take up an apprenticeship or go to university, so that we can employ you. Because this is like I say, these spacecraft, we want to run them for 15, 20 plus years. I don't want to still be working when I'm 80. So this is one of the things we actually start doing. We brought in last year. We brought in our apprenticeship program to give the opportunity for people who have finished their A levels, maybe they don't want to head off to university straight away, that opportunity to come in and train as a satellite operations for 2 years with qualifications around that. I think that's probably my time done. So do you have any questions?
We'll have time for questions later on.
Okay.
As well, so if you haven't got anything now, that's not an issue. Well, good. Well, it's a big
Thank you.